Hi, welcome to FilmSauce. I'm FilmSauce, and in this Saucy video, I'm looking at Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, released in 1989. Once again, Steven Spielberg returned to direct, with him being a part of a 5-picture deal with Paramount. And that plan obviously didn't exactly, go to plan. Writing for The Last Crusade was the late Jeffrey Boehm, who also wrote screenplays for Lost Boys, as well as Lethal Weapon 2 and 3. So this man went around. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is the final film in the original trilogy, and some wish it was the final film overall. In the film, we have Indiana Jones return, pursuing the Holy Grail against the Nazis with his daddy man. Now sit back and relax, and don't accidentally whip yourself, and enjoy FilmSauce Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The movie now begins where we see some Boy Scouts traversing somewhere in 1912 Utah. Two of the Boy Scouts split up from the group and go inside some caves where they find some grave robbers who are currently in the middle of excavating the fictional cross of Coronado. These two Boy Scouts watch the robbers, and it is revealed this fine young lad here is the young Indiana Jones, played by River Phoenix. And after this betrayal of this character, River was actually offered to don the fedora again in Indiana Jones' TV show, The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. River Phoenix did end up turning down the role, and he later passed away due to a drug overdose. Rest in peace. Seeing all this grave robbing go down makes Minnie Jones a bit grumpy. So he sends this trumpet boy to get the sheriff, and oh no, Indy, watch out, it's a snake.
Yeah, it's only a snake.
Oh, Indy, you know yourself when you're hungry. Indy now goes ahead and steals the cross, but he ain't level 100 archaeologist yet, so he alerts the robbers who chase him. Indy runs outside and gets on a horse. He gets on a horse with the bad guys on his tail in some cars. Indy is chased to a train, which he hops on. After a chase straight from a side-scroller, finding out his true fear of snakes, almost getting penetrated by a rhino, and being Jack Sparrow, he lands right in front of nonchalant grave robber Garth, played by Richard Young, who you might know from the hit movie Cherry Hill High. Anyway, Indy falls into a train carriage with a lion in it, and the only way to save himself is to whip that lion. Or yourself, you could do that. After keeping the lion away, Garth, being just a chill guy, decides to save Indy, who says the cross belongs to a museum. Then he runs away again to a magic carriage where he hides in a box that, when opened by Garth, reveals, by God, that kid is magical. Oh, there he is. Indy runs on home to his dad, who ain't bothered to listen to his child talk about what he watched on YouTube Shorts that day. But the trumpet kid comes on over to the Jones house with the sheriff and, the grave robbers, who claim the cross for their boss. But Garth, being a cool guy, gives young Indy his hat so we can have this transition to the returning Harrison Ford getting beaten on this boat because Indy tried to steal the cross from Panama Hat again. And yes, the name for this boss character is Panama Hat, and Garth's name was simply Fedora. Panama Hat orders his men to throw Indy overboard, but Indy just beats everyone up, grabs the cross, and voluntarily jumps overboard, and the ship just explodes. Now back to the USA. Indy is picked up from some guys sent by this man named Donovan, played by Julian Glover, who shows Indy this religious artifact, which in Latin yaps about the Holy Grail, which was Jesus' chalice at the Last Supper, and supposedly can grant immortality. They begin to dump a lot of lore, so I'll do some teacher's notes. Indy's own father was into the Holy Grail. 3 knights back in the day of the First Crusade found the Holy Grail, and the knight's story was written down by Friar, revealing there are 2 markers that point towards the Holy Grail location. The tablet on the table is one of the markers. The second marker is believed to be in Venice, Italy. The man leading the project has vanished, along with his research, and Donovan wants Indy to pick up the trail And the man who disappeared is Indy's father. Did you get all that? Indy and Marcus now go to Indy's dad's house, which is just a mess. But Indy remembers in an earlier scene he got mail from Venice, Italy. And, well, your door, he's going to open that. And when he does, he finds it's his father's Grail diary, which is just a cheat sheet for the Holy Grail. Indy now decides to take Donovan's offer, and with Marcus, they travel to Venice to find this man called Dr. Schneider, who ain't no man, my god! Elsa Schneider, played by Alison Doody, don't laugh at the last name, now leads the men to the library, where Indy's father disappeared. Indy and Marcus now do some detective work, where they figure out that the tomb with the second marker is in the library, and a funny callback to earlier before when Indy said X won't mark the spot, here X marks the spot. Indy now begins to smash the floor, finding a catacomb. Indy and Elsa just drop on down, leaving Marcus in the library with Indy's father's diary. But who's this? Some men walk into the library and they knock Marcus out. Oh, that's Gore, my comfort character. Indy, after smashing a wall down, finds another tunnel full of petroleum. You know, the highly flammable stuff. So as long as Indy doesn't use fire, he'll be fine. Oh my god. They continue traversing the tunnels past rats that only Count Orlok could love. And for the scene, production actually bred 2,000 rats, which is an insane amount of ratatouilles, but it was needed to prevent the spread of disease. Indy and Elsa now reach the tomb, and hey, Indy, watch it, you could start a fire. Indy, though, now discovers the second marker and begins doing copy and paste the old-fashioned way. Meanwhile, at the other end of the catacombs, the scary boys who knocked Marcus out light the petroleum, and if it weren't for them, Indy was probably going to do it soon enough. Hearing the fires coming, Indy tips the tomb into the petroleum, allowing Elsa and himself a nice, safe breathing spot, which buys them enough time for Indy to find a way out. Elsa and Indy are now escaped into the streets of Venice when they are spotted by the Venice boys. The two rivaling forces change the playing ground to boats in a pretty epic chase, including this really cool boat scene. Indy then, after the chase, kidnaps this guy, Kazim, for interrogation, where he explains him and the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword just want to protect the Seeker of the Grail. And he also tells Indy that his father is being held in the castle of Brunwald on the German-Austrian border. Marcus and Indy retreat to their hotel room to figure stuff out, like how the tablet mentioned the city of Alexandretta, which was the missing piece to the map in the Grail diary. Indy leaves Marcus's hotel room to find his room and Elsa's room dumped. Then they have a lover's quarrel, which gets them all horny. Indy and Elsa now leave for the castle of Brunwald, and once there, they need to find a sneaky way in. And what do? They do a clothes swap, and Indy does a Scottish accent. But somehow this great disguise doesn't work, so he just knocks out this butler and continues on finding a Nazi headquarters in the room he suspects his dad is in. Indy goes to the next room down and goes outside the window, does some parkour, and smashes through the window of the room where he suspects his dad is. And just like the previous movies, Harrison Ford does a lot of his own stunts, to the point where stuntman Vic Armstrong had to tell Ford to let him do his job. Anyway, Indy now gets hit over the head with a vase by his own dad, Henry Jones, played by Sean Connery, who is bloody James Bond. Kind of nice to know that, in a way, Spielberg did get to do his dream of directing James Bond. Now the two kind of bond over finding, the Grail, you know. Sweet stuff, but it is kind of funny hearing Indy calling Henry dad, since the two actors only have a 12-year age difference. Anyway, Henry explains how the Nazis want the Grail diary, but he's rudely interrupted by some Nazis who want the diary. But hey, at least Indy didn't bring the diary to the Nazis. That would be stupid. Never mind. But who cares? Indy mows down these Nazis and goes back to where he left Elsa, who is currently taken hostage by this guy, who is threatening to kill her. And Henry's just sitting in the corner calling Elsa a Nazi, which he isn't wrong about, because once Indy relinquishes his gun privileges, Elsa takes the diary for the Nazis. Yeah, that's right. Your favorite Disney princess is a Nazi. The father and son duo captured are now taken to Donovan. Dun dun dun. Anyway, Donovan skims through the diary, finding pages missing, and it turns out Indy gave these pages to my man Marcus, who's currently in Africa with my other main man Salah. I love having these two returning actors from Raiders, Denholm Elliott and John Rhys-Davies, interact. Such fun characters. But sadly, these two great actors don't get to interact for too long, as Brody is immediately kidnapped in such a silly, stupid way. Like, we cannot blame Salah for this. Seriously, did the Nazis hire Wile E. Coyote for this Looney Tunes-ass sketch? Back to Austria, Indy and Henry are left alone, where they try to escape, with Henry using Indy's lighter to burn the ropes. But instead of burning the rope, he accidentally burns everything else. They begin chair hopping to the fireplace, which turns out as a secret door to some Nazi headquarters, where there is a few fun gags. Indy and Henry, however, break free and then break the Nazis' ankles, which helps them to be able to escape. And they escape through another secret tunnel to the outside world. The duo hop on a bike with a sidecar, ready for another great chase, which ends with all the Germans on the ground writhing in pain. Hooray. Now, they need the diary, and where is it? Berlin, because of course. Cutting to Berlin, Indy finds himself in the midst of a book burning, with the whole Fortnite squad in attendance. Goebbels, Goering, Himmler, and Hitler. Something interesting about this book burning scene is that most of these costumes are actually real Nazi uniforms found by the late costume designer Anthony Powell, who also was the costume designer for Temple of Doom. Elsa is also here at the book burning, and Indy easily just takes the diary from her and tries to walk away, but he's swept up in the crowd and runs into Hitler, who kindly takes the diary and signs it. Wow, he must really love his fans. Indy and Henry now take the first flight out of Germany on this Zeppelin, safe and sound. Never mind, some Germans are coming up, with one of them being Pat Roach, who was the beefcake in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom. But he does have a much smaller appearance in this film due to his fight scene being scrapped. And that's the last we see Beefcake in the series. Farewell. I love you, man. Indy now steals a ticket guy's uniform as disguise, while Henry is being captured by the Nazis again. Indy then just beats the guy and throws him out the Zeppelin, then says a joke. Henry and Indy do some talking, reflecting on how Henry's just a bad father. But it's funny thinking that the set of the Zeppelin was so hot that the two actors were actually doing the scene pantless. The lengths actors go, eh? The two now do some talking about the 3 challenges they'll have to go through for the Holy Grail. But the Nazis figure something is up, so the Zeppelin turns around, heading back to Germany. So the Jones boys hijack a plane, but they aren't scot-free yet, as the Luftwaffe are in pursuit. The Germans easily destroy the tail of the Joneses' plane, so they crash land, then commit grand theft auto, with the Germans refusing to give up even when the Jones boys go through a tunnel. That's next level dedication. But the road in front of them gets bombed, so the car gets totaled, leaving the Jones boys on foot with one more plane left. And how do they get out of this predicament? Well, obviously, Henry scares some birds that crash the plane. Obviously. Indy and Henry now team back up with Salah, and together they find Marcus, who is with a tank. Donovan, Elsa, and this Nazi guy, who I've not really mentioned yet, but his name is Vogel, played by Michael Byrne. These are now attacked by the Brotherhood guys from before, and there is an all-out gunfight, which allows Indy to steal some horses, and while Henry is supposed to do nothing, he goes in the tank to save Marcus, when he himself is captured by the Nazis again. The Jones boys do that a lot. Indy is now on the run from the tank, which was actually just made from an excavator, and that a fun way to use an excavator. Indy kind of just messes with the tank crew at first, making it run over cars, stuffing turrets with rocks, making them explode. But Indy must have watched some Star Wars movies because he goes to the high ground, allowing him to leap onto the tank where he scores a triple kill. Good bravo. Indy begins getting beaten up by Vogel while Henry beats up the tank crew. But the fight with Vogel ain't going well because Indy just gets pushed off the edge of the tank where he hangs on the gun for dear life and is about to become Indiana Sandwich. But thankfully, when the tank driver is shot, the tank drifts to the side, saving Indy. Now the tank is driving towards a cliff though, so the boys get ready to leave and Marcus just falls off the edge, the tank. Salah safely retrieves Henry, leaving just Indy and Vogel on the tank when it drives off the edge. And just when Henry's all sad about losing his son, Indy just pops up because there's 2 more movies left. The boys now go through a canyon, finding the temple where the Holy Grail's hidden. But the Nazis got there first and are currently sending a guy through the first challenge to the Grail, where he gets his block knocked off. Ew, what an ick. But hey, it's an Indiana Jones movie, so the boys are all captured by the Nazis, as per usual. Now, Donovan wants Indy to go through the challenges for him, but since Indy refuses to go down the history books as a Nazi, he refuses. So Donovan shoots Henry. So, now Indy has to get the Grail to save dear old dad. Indy moves ahead to the first challenge, reading the hints his dad wrote in the diary along the way. The first challenge, only the penitent man will pass, and Indy, doing some smart thinking, figures the penitent man kneels before God, so he kneels, just before he was about to be cut up by these old saws. Indy now goes over to the second challenge, where he has to proceed in the footsteps of the Word of God, which is the name of God, Jehovah. And after a few small oopsies, Indy makes it through to the third challenge, which is just a chasm. But only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth, so basically a leap of faith. And Indy takes that leap, revealing that there is a pathway across the chasm. Indy now makes it to a chamber with a knight, played by Robert Edison, sitting there, who tries to kill Indy, but kind of just falls. This knight begins yapping about how Indy must beat him in a battle, but he's interrupted by Donovan and Elsa showing up, wanting the Grail. But there are like 50 chalices there, and one is the Holy Grail that grants eternal life, while the rest kill you. This is how people gambled 1,700 years ago, kids. Elsa now picks out a chalice for Donovan, who scoops up some water and takes a big old sip for eternal life. And after the drink, Donovan begins looking a bit zombie-ish. Then he starts rapidly aging. And then he grabs Elsa, but thankfully Indy just pushes his decaying body into the wall, which crumbles his bones. No more Donovan. He was a Nazi, he deserved it. Indy now goes to pick out a cup, getting one he thinks looks like the cup of a carpenter, and takes a swig. And as the knight said, "You have chosen wisely." But he also says make sure you don't take the Grail past the seal or uh-oh. Indy now takes the Grail to Henry, who takes a sip and has the holy water poured onto his flesh wound, saving him. Hooray! But Elsa now takes the Grail, all excited, but you know that thing that happens to everyone when you're so happy and joyful, then you do something cringe or embarrassing? Well, Elsa does that when she takes the Grail past the seal. So now the temple begins to destroy itself, and the ground just splits open and the Grail falls into it, as well as Elsa. But Indy grabs Elsa before she falls, and she won't let Indy save her until she takes the Grail. And Indy with his butterfingers just drops her. And now the ground beneath Indy collapses, and he's in the same situation Elsa was in, with Henry trying to save him and Indy trying to reach the Grail. But after Henry tells him to let go, Indy lets Henry save him. Now, our best 4 boys are out of the temple, safe and sound, and they ride off after that goofy son of a bitch Marcus into the sunset. And that is the end of the movie. Now it's time to go to those source points we all love. For my ranking, I'll start off with what I liked about this film. Firstly, I love all the characters. Indiana, obviously, but Henry Silla, Marcus, Elsa, etc. are all just great. The action sequences are legendary. The effects are awesome, especially Donovan's death. And I would say this is probably the most funny of the films. So bravo to comedy. And most importantly, the best part of this film is the relationship between Indy and Henry. Love that father-son dynamic. Anyway, on to the negatives. There aren't any. Yeah, perfect film. And if you dislike it, you're wrong. I'll award Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade a 10 out of 10 on the source points. And now, it is time for me to bid ye adieu. Like and subscribe, and maybe I'll see you again sometime. Goodbye.